Well, it's that time of week again. Welcome to Steve's Place. Tonight's guest will be Michael Petrovich, and but before we get him on there, we got a few little housekeeping items to take care of. Um, I want to remind everyone to consider becoming a member, exclusive member of TeslaTech.info, our YouTube channel. It's $9.99 per month with global access 24/7. Our goal here is to get about 300 members in there before the end of the year is what our goal is. And there's a lot of benefits to being a member of the YouTube channel. Number one is to be able to get access to all our videos. We have over 600 videos up there, of which 300 are available through subscriptions, but the rest of them are all members only, and they rotate. And the key to it is for $9.99 a month, you can see things that say like the 2021 conference, which is now up there. If you haven't bought the DVDs, you can go online for $9.99 a month and watch them there. If you have a 24-month badge, which will happen in 2 years, you'll get a free registration to the conference. If you're a YouTube exclusive member of YouTube. And for those who don't want to join, underneath each video, you'll have this bar, and where you can do a like or dislike, share or download, or you can even do a thanks. This is super thanks. By clicking on super thanks, you can give anywhere from like $1 to $50. As a special thanks. A special support contribution, and that a one-time deal, and it gives you a highlighted comment. It just shows that you really like that video. And so we'd like to encourage you maybe to do a super thanks. But most important of all now is our upcoming conference, August 10th to 14th at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Albuquerque. It's a great hotel. This will be our about fourth year there. And we will have, for those who are staying at the hotel, there'll be a buffet, breakfast buffet every morning, for free, as part of the room if you're staying there. And it's a full buffet, like eggs, the bacon and sausage, the whole works, And you can just walk through the line, and get your plate. You can either eat out in the patio, or you can go into the room where, if you're running late, and watch the conference start. The conference itself, we have about 20 speakers on that. It's a very good price. Right now, we're giving a 30% discount if you sign up. In the next couple of days here. Your participation is vital. And I just can't say it enough. Conferences are for people. If you've never been to a conference, it's a great time to go. Get out of your house. Get into the human race again. And with that, I'm going to introduce our next guest, Michael Petrovich. Hello, Michael.
Hello. Hi,
Welcome
Steve.
to the show. And tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike.
Well, technically, I was trained as an engineer, as a mechanical engineer, and then also have a business degree. But later in life, I started getting into alternative medicine and looking at different devices that could help people move to a higher state of health and vitality. And so that became my passion for many, many years. I spent a long time as a business consultant, but kind of in my new life, I'm looking at what things can help people move to this higher state of health.
Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and there's your slideshow, and I'm just going to let you just go ahead and just take over from here and just start your presentation.
Okay. I think you'll find this presentation somewhat interesting. This is similar to a presentation I gave at Tesla Tech a couple of years ago. I've added a few things, and I think you'll find it quite interesting. But it is a presentation that is basically asking a question. When we look at all of the different modes for healing out there, using especially different energy waves, the question is, should we be using a frequency or a waveform? And that's what we want to talk about. I'm going to give you an outline. I want to talk about this field of vibrational healing, which is going to involve a number of different things, especially as we talk about using frequencies for healing, frequencies and different waveforms. So you'll see an overview of some history and take you up to some things that are happening in the present. I think there were things that happened, especially in the 20th century, especially this use of frequencies. And I think maybe in 2022, or I should say maybe the 21st century, we're going to be entering into a realm where we're going to be talking about healing modalities that include information. I have uploaded this presentation, a PDF document, to the link that you'll see at the bottom of this slide. So if we talk about vibrational healing, we're looking at the stimulation of the physical or energetic systems of the body through vibrational energy transfer. There are various modes in which that can occur. We often look at Star Trek and some of the science fiction movies, and we think about healing. And when we watch those shows, we see healing done in a completely different manner. And I think what we're going to see in the future is more and more less biochemical modes of healing and more electrotherapy and other forms. So when we talk about vibrational healing, it's energy that can be delivered through sound, through physical vibration, through light, and other electromagnetic energy. So when we deliver that to the body, certain physiological changes take place. And that leads to what my presentation is about. If I just sat here for the next hour and all I did was hum, if I just went, oh, and I did that for an hour, for some of you, you might find it stimulating, but in this case, when we think about just a certain frequency, it is a force. But what I'm going to be talking more and more about is what happens with a complex waveform, which is a mixture or a pattern. And that's basically conveying information. So if I just hum, it delivers a certain frequency or a force, and that might be stimulating. But it doesn't give you information as if I'm talking like I am now. So if we look at a singular simple wave, they can be quite powerful. But if you look at a complex waveform or mixtures or patterns, maybe that can move us up to a higher level of healing technology. So in the history of using frequencies in healing, we have to go back to Raymond Rife, who passed away in 1971. But going back to the early 20s and 30s, he began an intense amount of research, originating with the development of a universal microscope. So in the 1930s, in the Smithsonian Institute, they highlighted in an article this particular microscope. It contained over 5,000 parts, but could do some things that standard microscopes at the time could not. In addition, in the same journal, the electron microscope was introduced. Again, this is back in the 30s. So what Royal Raymond Rife did was he developed a microscope that went beyond the optical limits of a standard reflection microscope. So he could have a magnification up to 50,000 times, where the best laboratory microscopes would not be more than, let's say, 2,000 diameters. Viruses, for the very first time, could now be seen live. But what was interesting was the technique that he used. He figured out that by tuning to certain resonant frequencies of a microbe, he could view it, because when he tuned to that frequency, the microbe would glow and then emit a light that he could capture through his microscope. So he called this staining with light. What was interesting then, he realized that there were certain natural frequencies of various microbes, and then he came up with this idea of a mortal oscillatory rate. And what that means is that he's stimulating a virus or a pathogen at its natural frequency. And what that does, it causes the pathogen to vibrate. As the intensity increases, the vibrational forces can become destructive. In fact, this goes back to like Tesla talking about bringing down the Empire State Building with a small device stimulating at its natural frequency. So by just stimulating something at its natural frequency, it causes a vibration. If the intensity of the stimulation increases, then you can actually destroy something. So that's what Rife did. He moved forward and he developed machines that could also emit certain frequencies. And what he would do is spend hours looking at a pathogen on a microscope, under his microscope. And from that, he could figure out, when he stimulated them with an electromagnetic field, he could figure out where they started reacting. And ultimately, they developed what are called Rife machines. Rife machines basically is a device that could emit electromagnetic energy, either with a plasma tube, and there were other methods that were developed later, that would basically kill certain diseases. So Rife got into some legal trouble and was called to give a court testimony. And in that court testimony, he makes the following claim. He says, I have studied the following: tetanus, typhoid, gonorrhea, syphilis, staph, pneumonia, strep, tuberculosis, sarcoma, carcinoma, leprosy, polio, cholera, and on and on and on. Actinomycosis, glandular, bubonic plague, anthrax, influenza, herpes, cataracts, glaucoma, colitis, sinus ulcers, and many other types of bacteria. So he looked at a number of different things that he could deactivate with his particular machines. In fact, in 1931, November 20th, now this is almost, well, a little over 90 years ago, they assembled some of the great people in the medical world at the time, and they had an honorary dinner in Rife's name, where they billed this as the end to all disease, where they said, with this kind of research, we can destroy many of the things that were facing us. He had cured cancer victims and others from various problems that they had. In the 1950s, a guy by the name of John Crane worked with Rife. He developed a device using audio frequencies. So he's using about 1/10 of the original Rife frequencies. And he also introduced using Rife frequencies through electrodes or paddles that people would hold in their hands. So let's go forward. As I said, Rife died in 1971. That information basically went into the history, to lost history, I should say. In 2008, a guy by the name of Otto Sankey, who was a physicist at Arizona State University, they came up with a method of looking at the frequencies related to a virus. So in 2008, he said this: the capsid protein shell of a virus is something like a shell of a turtle. If the shell can be compromised by mechanical vibrations, the virus can be inactivated. So Sankey and his student Eric Dykman have developed a way to calculate the vibrational motion of every atom in a virus shell. From this, they can determine the lowest resonant frequencies. As an example of this technique, the team modeled the satellite tobacco narcosis virus and found that the small virus resonates strongly around 60 gigahertz. So this was the first time we saw, let's call it mainstream science, going back and looking at the kind of thing that Rife was looking at. And from that, got the idea that they could, in fact, destroy viruses or other pathogens with electromagnetic frequency. So in the 1980s, something interesting happened. So if we look at Rife's, all of his work basically going into this black hole of history, something happened. First, a guy by the name of Christopher Bird, some people know him. He's the author of a book called The Secret Life of Plants, and he wrote a number of other articles. He wrote an article entitled "What Has Become of the Rife Microscope?" And from that, there was a resurgence. Then we move into the 1980s. In the 1980s, Barry Lyons wrote a book that came out in 1987. It was called The Cancer Cure That Worked. In that book, he highlighted the story of Royal Raymond Rife. In the late, or I should say early 2000s, I attended some of these conferences. They were held up in the Seattle area. The Rife conferences brought people together from all over the world. And these were different people looking at how to develop Rife machines, how to use this technology, what frequencies to use, what were the best protocols, all of that. And so all of that was discussed in these conferences. So this, if you think about the 1980s as basically a reawakening of what Rife did. So carrying on from the 1980s into the 1990s, much activity centered around this particular topic. At one of these conferences I attended, a gentleman by the name of Doug McLean was a speaker. Doug McLean had Lyme, and somebody told him that you could kill pathogens with frequencies. So he thought that was curious. You can't do this anymore, but what he did is he wrote to the CDC and he got a sample of the spirochete pathogens that cause Lyme disease. And what he did is he made a coil of a little electric coil, and he connected it to a frequency generator. And he put that coil on his microscope table, put the slides with the spirochetes in it, and then just one by one went through different frequencies. And then when he got to 306 hertz, he said something unusual happening here. He called his wife in. She also had Lyme. And they both stared at this as he submitted these spirochetes to this frequency. And he said they started moving. But the other interesting thing was he and his wife both got headaches. So not only was this little coil affecting the spirochetes on his microscope table, it was also affecting the spirochetes that were in his body. So it was basically killing the Lyme within him. Some people later called these devices the Doug coil. As this new community formed around Rife frequencies, there were some new insights. Specifically, they determined that certain frequencies could be used to destroy or devitalize pathogens. But they also discovered that there were other frequencies that the body really liked. Sometimes I think of this as there are certain frequencies that the body takes in almost like nutrition. So it's basically an electromagnetic nutrition. So some frequencies are not so good. Some are really good. So Rife developed a frequency list of different frequencies, but it was after Rife many other people came forward and developed different frequencies for different things. And I'm just showing you in this particular slide just one. I'm starting with A. Just one page out of hundreds and hundreds of pages of frequencies that can be used in a Rife machine. So we have to think about is that the body is not just a biochemical machine as is often thought. It's actually a bioelectrochemical machine. Some people call this the body electric. So resonant sound or vibrational energy can stimulate the body systems. Electromagnetic energy can interact with the electrical circuits of the body or the bioelectric field. So we have the bioelectrical field that surrounds the body, but also within. And so that resonant frequency, if you find the right frequencies, it's like a push. And you think about how you push a swing. So it once you find the resonant frequency and you push at the right rate, you can get movement into a particular part of the body. So frequencies, as I said, they can be good or bad. Certain frequencies have been identified as healthy for the body. Some frequencies are destructive. I happen to have a show of an active denial system. An active denial system is used to, it's a non-lethal weapon that would make people, this is gigahertz range, it would make the skin feel like it's burning, but not cause any harm. Well, there were others, and not just Rife, that was looking at specific frequencies. Paul Nogier looked at some frequencies according to their embryologic origin or how it develops. He found 7 frequencies that were natural to our body. 3 frequencies correspond to 3 tissue types plus 4 additional frequencies. Again, so now we're into the realm of looking at what frequencies can assist the body. Sickness results, according to Nogier, sickness results when cells, molecules, or particles of matter are out of normal resonance or vibratory pattern. So there's a healthy frequency that these cells might have. By repeatedly exposing damaged tissues to the normal resonant frequencies associated with that tissue, healing often occurs, sometimes quite rapidly. And here were his particular 7 different frequencies. He had 292 hertz or cycles per second, which is the outermost tissue, 584 hertz, which is the innermost tissue of the body, 1,168 resonates with the mesoderm or the middle tissue that forms a connective tissue like ligaments, tendons, cartilage, muscles, and bone. And then 2,336 helps to balance the 2 sides of the brain. And then harmonic frequency resonates with the subcortical lower regions of the brain. And then he also came up with 146 used for memory, psychological disorders, nervousness, and worry. Another person that was looking at frequencies, but this using a different mechanism, he was looking at treating the body with light. Dinshah Ghadiali, starting in the early part of the century, 1900s, I should say, he was treating people with a filtered light shining onto the person's body. So they'd have a person sitting in a dark room. They would shine this device he had different filters that he used. They would shine the light onto them. He called this Spectracone Therapy, and here's just an example of some of given the different colors, they would use each of these different colors for the treatment of different phenomena. Although it may sound wild, but here in standard Western medicine, if a newborn has jaundice called hyperbilirubinemia, if I can say that, occurs when the liver's function is inadequate to break down red blood cells for excretion. So jaundice or bilirubin buildup in the body's tissues turns the infant's skin and eyes yellow, and that can be treated with a blue light, and that's a standard medical practice. And that, again, a standard medical practice of using a light therapy. Len Horowitz and Joseph Paleo came up with a book that became quite popular, where he came up with the solfeggio frequencies. So they took 6 notes, the origin from a medieval hymn to John the Baptist, derived from numerical patterns encoded in the King James Bible. And so what they did is they came up with these various frequencies that some people claim is great at providing different healing modalities. So now I'm moving into not just pure frequencies, but also something a little bit different. This happens to be a device called electroacuoscope and myopulse, and now there's a new called an Equiscope. But this was invented back in 1979 by a physicist by the name of Anthony Brinsky, who, by the way, became a billionaire as he developed missile guidance technology, which is interesting because that technology is also used in this device. So it was a microcurrent device, and there's many out there. But I wanted to show you was the waveforms that was used. So what we have is pulses within a waveform. So we had the myopulse, which is good for bones, muscles, and connective tissue. It's operating with a sine wave with pulses within the sine wave. It's a, I would say pseudo, it's kind of a chopped sine wave. And then the Acuscope was basically a square wave with pulses within the square wave. And then one of the innovations that the Brinsky added was using cybernetic control, meaning the device reads the tissue impedance, and then it's sending in corrective signals to make that shift. I will tell you that these particular devices, I've seen lots of alternative medicine devices out there. This one really works. It's quite impressive. Now, Lakhovsky, I think it almost is anti-Rife, where Rife was using a specific frequency to, let's say, kill or destroy a pathogen. Lakhovsky had a different idea. He was flooding the body with different frequencies. So his idea was that certain cells need certain frequencies, and if I flood the body with a mixture of different frequencies, like thousands and thousands of frequencies, the cells that need that energy will take that energy and absorb it. So he developed what is called a multi-wave oscillator, similar to the picture that you see there. Also, Nikola Tesla provided him some help with developing the circuitry to drive this device. Another mode of treatment is we've talked about light, and now we want to talk about sound. And this goes back to some work that Hans Jenny did in the field that was called cymatics. What Hans Jenny did was take a metal plate with sand on top and submit those plates to various frequencies. What he found is if you change the frequencies, the patterns would change. This is quite interesting. And also when you started adding multiple frequencies, not only did it change the patterns, but it became more three-dimensional. And it's interesting if you think about it. So I have sound affecting the formations of sound. So then you think, what happens in the body when the body receives sound? In the 1960s, a guy by the name of Peter Guy Manners continued with this development and started looking at what happens when you submit the body to low acoustic frequencies in the 100 to 1600 hertz range. And what he also discovered was there was power in using certain frequencies, but there was more power when you combined them. And he determined that 5 frequencies was most effective. And he was using, let's say I wanted to deliver 528 hertz as a frequency. What he would do is hit 528 and then go around it. You'd go 528, 529, 530, and then you would go 528, 527, 526. But he found is when he hits all 5 frequencies, he gets a vastly greater healing frequency, healing effect. Many of others have continued with this work, and some use not just nearby frequencies, but multiple frequencies in a much larger range. Gary Buchanan, I've got a quote from him. Gary Buchanan just passed away. He was down in Reno, Nevada, and he was actually doing therapy on people with this technology, and he had come up with some useful things. But I want to read this statement that he made. Researchers in bioresonance understand that we have moved beyond Newtonian medicine into the realm of post-Einsteinian biomatter and organizing fields. All of life may be viewed as an interaction of subtle and dynamic energy fields within greater consciousness and bioresonant fields that are said to be coherent and synchronous, while at the same time being carriers of information factors. So Gary's introducing this idea of introducing, whether it's using sound, electromagnetic frequencies, light, using these in such a way that they're providing information. Professor William Nelson, who I think he goes by Desiree now as his alter ego, he developed a device called the Epfx or the SCIO or QXCI, but he defined this as electrophysiofeedback zeroid. This is back in 1989. He called this an evoked potential feedback device. What I want to point out is that he uses a tri-vector system using a 22 by 22 by 22 matrix to encode substances. So if I wanted to, let's say, take epinephrine, I would encode it not just as a frequency, but as a 22 by 22 by 22 matrix. And that would be different than, let's say, vitamin C, which would be its own 22 by 22 by 22 matrix. And so this technology is using not frequencies, but an electromagnetic signature encoded in a three-dimensional space. We discovered years ago that infrared, if it's passed through crystals, such as here we have a biomat, crystals modulate the infrared waves. So if I use the infrared, which can be very healing to the body emits and receives infrared at a specific frequency. If the body is taking in that infrared, it tends to like it. But if I modulate the waveform, that means if I shine the light through crystals, shining the light through crystals has a different effect. So using this, I'm getting something quite different than simple infrared. In fact, the creator of the product called the Biomat, which is basically an infrared mat with crystals, said, I was asking him about the frequency of the infrared, and he said, it's not really the infrared that's of interest. The infrared is only a carrier wave for the information stored in the crystals. Something is in the crystals that it transfers to the body. So crystal infrared acts as an information carrier. When passed through various materials, including human and animal DNA, pheromones, as well as gemstones such as amethyst. Research concluded that infrared alone was not effective for healing as infrared passed through amethyst. As one Korean research scientist said, it appears that with infrared, we're talking about energy, but with the addition of amethyst, again, now we're changing the waveform. We are now talking about energy plus healing information. Along those lines, going back to 1922, a guy by the name of Gertzwitz started experimenting with onion roots and found that there was some kind of a communication system from one onion to another. And thought that was very interesting. It was a light connection. Fritz Albert Popp, back in 1982, developed a biophoton theory and coined the term biophotons. So they're coherent photons emitted from biological organisms that transmit information. So there's some kind of information that's being transferred. It's not a frequency, but there's information giving it some insight into something that needs to happen. So living organisms send and receive information. We have chaotic light, coherent light, and then we have disturbances. and you can send in certain biophotons to correct those. So now we get into some really weird stuff. So allergies and biophoton information. Look at this. We have allergies may not be a chemical reaction, but a biophoton information reaction. So look at this experiment. They took light waves, passed through an allergy factor, let's say pollen or something that would cause an allergy. Passing that light through a sealed container onto the person is giving her allergy symptoms. How can that be? Somehow the light is operating as a carrier wave for the information stored in this allergy factor. So blocking the transmission, blocking the light transfer would stop the allergy symptoms. So Dr. Chang Kanzen says the electromagnetic vibration pattern of one living organism can be transferred to cause physical changes in another living organism. So 90% of our DNA, while generally considered junk, might actually be involved in communication via light. So a guy by the name of Guriev, a Russian academician, suggested that our junk DNA actually amounts to a holographic projector. And I'm going to show you some of the work that this guy has done, which you'll find fascinating. So they did some studies. Chang Kai-Zen invented a DNA information transfer device. So they're shooting biophotons through duck DNA, and from that duck DNA into chicken eggs. And the result, when they did that, was get duck chickens. Now, what you're seeing here is the power of, we're sending simply a waveform into these chicken eggs. This waveform had information from the duck DNA, and that altered the chickens. 480 chickens, 25%, their feet changed to be like duck feet. 80%, their head changed to be like a duck head. 70% had longer necks. 90% had their eyes changed like duck eyes. This is just not physical contact, but sending those frequencies and waveforms into the chicken eggs. Interesting that duck chickens' next generation became the same as duck chickens. And in case you're not making it up, if I think I'm making this up, here are some pictures of some duck chickens. Let me show you this one. This is a duck chicken hybrid. Here is a chicken. Notice that it has duck feet. Notice the web-like feet, and his head's different. Here again, another picture of his feet. They took wheat and they took light, passed through the wheat DNA into corn, and it created a supersized wheat corn, increased its size in 300%. It changed the DNA, continued on to the next generation. And they're also much stronger than normal. So this is probably even more interesting. Rabbits do not get a specific form of cancer. Infrared passed through rabbit DNA onto mice was the experiment. They took 300 mice that they induced them with this cancer. The control, 100% died. And then they took infrared through this DNA, 70% lived. So again, we're using this infrared as an information carrier. So somehow it increased the information, helped the 70% of the mice live. I don't know where the study was done or any more details around it, but supposedly they took the DNA from a small boy, passed that into his father, and the father was supposedly getting younger. Supposedly his hearing improved, his tumor disappeared, his hair changed to black, his new teeth are growing again. But I don't have the background of where this was done. But I can tell you that there's some really strange stuff going on. So let's look at some Soviet research. And I'm going to just look at some patents. The method to change organisms, heredities, and the device to transmit biological information. There's actually a patent. This is a Soviet Union patent. The method to rejuvenate organisms, Russian patent number, and given there. The device to transmit natural information nutrition to a biological object. Russian patent, and this has been 1995. How about a device for transmitting a natural information supply to a biological object? So we can see that the Russians were doing some really interesting research. Further, Russians worked on devices that can influence the cellular metabolism through modulated radio and light frequencies to repair genetic defects. Gargiev's research group succeeded in proving that chromosomes damaged by X-rays can be repaired. They even captured information patterns of a particular DNA and transmitted it onto another, thus reprogramming cells to another genome. They successfully transformed frog embryos to salamander embryos simply by transmitting the DNA information patterns. This is some really heavy stuff. More bizarre. The Russian scientists irradiated DNA samples with laser light and displayed the wave pattern onto a screen. When they removed the DNA sample, the wave pattern did not disappear. It remained. Many control experiments showed that the pattern still came from the removed sample, whose energy field apparently remained by itself. The effect is now called the phantom DNA effect. It surmised that energy from the outside of space and time flows through the activated wormholes after the DNA was moved. That's the scientific theory. Well, I presented this a few years at Teslotech, and I actually went onto Facebook, and I was able to connect with somebody that was familiar with the research. This is this guy. You'll see a Kornev and Gariev, something like that. I may not be saying their names correctly, but I got a couple translated Russian documents that were journal articles, and I just wanted to show them. What I did in the place where I told you you can download this presentation, I uploaded 2 journal articles that you may find interesting. But I just want to read what I have circled in red. This work introduces and describes the process in one type of helium neon laser and 2 orthogonal optical modes. These modes can record polarized modulations of scanned biological structures in the recording regime of the traveling intensity waves, holograms. This process is used to model recording and distant transmission of wave genetic information. So somehow they're doing like a 3-dimensional scan of something with their device, and they're using that to be able to project. Here was another article. This is basically getting into the mathematics, but I just want to read this last part if I can. It says, second, due to the action of the resonator, the laser will emit not a flat non-modulated wave, but a much more, I think, I can't read because I have got something blocked there, has been modulated by biological structure. First of all, by the chromosomes, the DNA, RNA, and other metabolites. So basically what he's talking about is the ability to transmit this energy or information into the body for a completely incredible, some kind of healing effect. I like this because it's a slide that has a double integral on it, but I just wanted to show you some of the kinds of things that they're into. It says a proposed physical mathematical model that describes a version of the polarization holographic vector shaped calibration of potential spatiotemporal dynamic processes of higher biosystems and their development and into adulthood. So they're talking about mathematically modeling this whole process that they have to look at higher transmission of information into biosystems. So these articles you'll find on the on the website link. So what I've been getting at is frequency research is incredible. There are specific frequencies that can deliver a tremendous amount of healing power. You know, I think about what our government spends. If we spent $1 billion just on frequency research, I think we would revolutionize health in the world. Maybe not even that much. So frequencies can have tremendous effect. As I've shown, it's not only effective for going after pathogens, but it can be extremely effective also for sustaining and providing almost, I can almost say like a nutrition for the body. But what I'm trying to introduce here, which I believe is going to be the future in this 21st century, is that we'll move more from just frequency research and looking at how frequencies can assist the body to also being able to transmit information. And when we transmit information, that will not be just a single, like a monochromic light wave, but a mixture. So wave patterns deliver information, which may not just assist the body toward a health and vitality, but possibly lead to the creation of life itself. We are on the frontiers of things that we can do. So here's my presentation. You can follow this link and it'll take you to be able to download the slides. So I would invite any questions that you might have. I see Steve has popped back in. You have some.
Yeah, I'd like to have people know if they're interested in joining us. The link for StreamYard is on the bottom of the screen. I found your presentation very interesting there, Mike.
Yeah.
It's can be very scary in some ways. I found fascinating, you know, whether or the duck chicken there, you know, makes you wonder what's really happening here. You know, if the frequencies can affect us so much, you know, and we live in a world that is totally bombarded with all sorts of frequencies these days. You know, and you got like 4G, 5G, and all this other stuff.
Yeah, electrical pollution.
We don't really know what's happening to us, you know. And if you can heal using frequencies and that, you can also cause disease, you know. And it's very kind of a scary thing, you know, that watching your computer, though, somebody could be beaming something onto you that you're totally unaware of, you know.
Yeah, change your DNA or something like that.
And so we may have to develop some kind of screen we could put on our computer screens to block some of that, you know. Almost kind of like we did for the EMF, you know, coming off these screens and that.
Yes.
When I worked for Unisys, we'd go around and would check the amount of radiation that's coming off these screens, you know, because, you know, it would generate such a high voltage, it would actually, you could damage chips, you know.
Yes.
Not to mention yourself, you're being exposed to that all the time, you know. And we actually put on these screens, you know, on top of our screens that would take and short circuit the radiation that's coming off the screen and drop it right to the ground, you know. So we need to develop something that'll protect ourselves because, like, you're talking light, you know, and
yeah, you can see
totally black, you know.
The entire electromagnetic spectrum is actually being used. It can be used good, and hope we have good guys that are working on trying to help people move to a more healthy state, but that it also can be used, and that's, by the way, the caveat about frequency research, because there are those that would be willing to use this as weapons development. So we always have to use the technology responsibly. But I'm also intrigued about the possibility of genetic healing, genetic defects and other things that people may have. And I think that's kind of the promise. It was quite interesting looking at radiation damage and other things that can occur. That's the future. Once we become, get out of our primitive state.
Well, we cover a lot of stuff at our conference, and I think, like we were one of the first organizations long before, I remember starting this stuff in 1984. And a lot of these concepts, as far as like the frequencies and health and that, it was kind of like poo-pooed, and we were one of the first organizations to do that, is to start covering this kind of stuff. And now I find myself going from like just playing frequencies of that more and more into a quantum reality here.
Yeah.
And this is just one little step along the way here on the highway to knowledge here,
Yes.
So hopefully you show up at our conference and you'll have your biomats again.
Yep, I will be there. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to connecting to people.
Oh yeah, I think it's so important for people to come to the conference. I think we're losing our sense of humanity. This whole disruption that we've been through in the last 2 years has done more to separate the human race than anything I can think of. It's took us from being social units into isolated people. And Americans have always been like the independent types, but this is ridiculous. We need to get together more often and be able to talk to each other. And the conference, is one way for us to do that. And I just can't emphasize that much. Our conference coming up in August. It's going to be a great conference. Always is. People get there, they have a great time. They get to meet people. You get to sit down and eat with people at night. You have breakfast with them. You don't know who you're going to run into or what. And this is the only time that you're really going to find, like a lot of these guys sit down and relax, because our lives are so busy. You can't do this and not keep busy. I mean, there's always something to do, and it just seems like there's never enough time. And I would like to encourage someone to at least write a comment on the screen there so I know that the thing is working. And if you have a question for Mike, I'm sure he's encouraging that.
Yeah.
I find the concept of the energy coming out of the crystal and the light or the infrared being actually just a modulation wave, a carrier wave. That's what we call it in the RF theory. This stuff is just fascinating. I don't know where we can go. This stuff. Too bad. Well, who knows? Maybe we can transmit water this way. So we can transmit it up into the Rockies there to start filling our dams up again.
Yes.
That's another major problem, is we're losing all this water, This whole concept of climate change, that goes back to frequencies too, because basically you have heat coming down and you're having this atmosphere changing and being a modulator of the frequency that gets reflected back up, and it hangs on to a lot of energy.
Yeah, it's a system that has dynamic feedback that continue changes things. Let me say a couple things about, maybe to people that haven't attended a conference before. I think you'll find it. I can tell you, there's almost every conference, you'll come away with memories that you'll have for the rest of your life. That you'll meet some of the most, they're just most friendly people. It's not just the presentations, but you're going to learn a lot. There are vendors there. There are people you'll meet in the hallways, at dinner, breakfast. You'll strike up conversations, and there's some things that you will learn through the presentations, but there's other things that you'll learn one-on-one when you meet the most fascinating people talking about some incredible things. And there's something also, because of the nature of the conference, it attracts a certain kind of people. And those are the people that you're going to really enjoy being around. Everybody, I brought multiple people to the conferences over the years, and they have come away just having this lifelong set of memories about how just enjoyable and fun and how enlightening it was.
Well, I know, like when I'm converting a lot of these conferences and that, when I just look at the title and who's speaking, you know, if I was at that conference, it just brings back all kinds of memories. And I remember people I haven't thought about in like 20 years or so, you know. It's amazing. You know, I can't believe that I have spent almost 40 years putting conferences together at this point. That's a lot of conferences. That's a lot of people. You know, unfortunately, a lot of those guys are no longer with us. You know, but their knowledge is with us. You know, every time, you know, we put up a new video up there, we're just adding to the base of knowledge for the human race here. I'm pretty excited, and we're one of the few organizations I think that you know, I can only think of what really about maybe 2, maybe 3 other organizations that are consistently putting out information today. You know, it's tough. You know, but it's important for people to get out there. I mean, I'm not getting any younger, although I hope we do some more research, because I'd like to learn more about that young DNA going into the elder guy and growing younger.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
And that slide alone is worth the whole thing tonight, you know, because if that's possible, you know, and they actually achieve the results that they achieve, wow. Thank you, Grandmaster.
Yeah, I think they'll basically have rejuvenation chambers or whatever that will.
And yeah, this rejuvenation. I mean, that's the cat's meow there. That's what we're all striving for, you know. I'd like to live another 100 years now, because it's getting interesting now, you know. And who knows what's going to happen. So,
I think especially as we fix some of our DNA problems, I think you're going to start to see life expectancies increasing greater and greater.
So anyway, does anyone have any questions or any comments, you know, on tonight's presentation, which I thought was an excellent presentation? Next week, we're going to have Randy Powell here. He'll be talking about vortex-based mathematics, which is essentially rodent coil material. And I've heard all kinds of things about the rodent coil and how it affects health and that, you know, which should be right up your field.
Yeah.
So, well, with that, you know, if no one else has any comments on that, you know, we're going to go ahead and call it a night, and invite everyone to be with us next week at 6 o'clock. And be sure to come to the conference and test out. You have your beds there, right?
Yes.
The mats, the biomats.
Yes, I'll have that.
Biomats, you know. I have one. I use it all the time, you know. Anytime I get any kind of aches, pains, or anything, I go crank the thing on and I go lay down on it. You know, in a couple hours, I'm totally refreshed, you know, and ready to roll again. So anyway, we're trying to get some good comments now. You try weighing down a flying saucer?
Shape my helium balloon on one side and float it. No, I have not done that.
So anyway,
But let people. Is it going to be available on YouTube for those that missed the presentation? Is that correct?
Yeah. And I'll just go. You can always go to my website, testatech.info, and click on Steve's Place, and it'll bring up the whole list of shows that we've had on Steve's Place. So anyway, you all have a great night, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Okay.